I made $8,000 in around 100 days directly through podcasting. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I did it. However, it is a tactic that is pretty controversial and some may even call unethical. However, I guarantee that 90%, if not 95% of podcasters would take this opportunity if they could. So if you've started a podcast, you're more than aware that it's more of a passion project. You invest a lot of time, a lot of energy, finances as well. If you choose to invest in an editor, the software, the hardware, and most of us never make a single penny directly through our show. And this was the same for me for almost 3 years. Of course, I was able to make money indirectly from someone who might have wanted a health and fitness coach who had listened to the podcast and got to know me a little bit better, but I had never made anything directly through my show. Until around 6 months ago, where I made a simple change that allowed me to make money from my podcast for the very first time. And if you've never earned from your podcast before, you can just imagine how this felt. And this wasn't just $20, $30, $40. This was money where you could really consider going full-time podcasting if your expenses were low enough, or definitely part-time at the very, very least. And now I'm going to go through the figures transparently so you know exactly how much you can expect to earn if you implement these tactics. So in August, after around a few weeks of build-up, I was able to receive my first payment roughly on August 15th. So from the 15th to the 31st, I believe that's how many days are in August, I was able to earn $1,574. In September, that jumped up to $2,546. That was an amazing month for me. In October, I was able to go over the 2,000 mark again and finish the month at $2,300. And in November, I earned a further $1,574. And if you put all those figures together, it works out to be somewhere around $7,996. So around $3 to $4 shy of the $8,000 in just 100 days. The first payment was roughly on August the 15th, and that total is all the way up until November 12th or 13th. So many people told me that there was no money in podcasting, or you would only make money if you were a big podcaster. However, $2,500 is a pretty good return, especially when podcasting for me was just a hobby. It wasn't my full-time job or anything. I know that 90 to 95% of podcasters who aren't earning money from their shows would absolutely love to do this type of money, and that's exactly why I wanted to tell you all about this in today's video. And the super important thing to mention here is this came directly through podcasting. This wasn't me selling a course, an ebook, a service, or a product, which is amazing ways of making money from your podcast, but it won't allow you to become a full-time podcaster per se. So the first thing that I want to talk about that contributed towards that $8,000 was a podcast platform that connects hosts with guests, and they pay you for each interview that you conduct. This ranged from 35 cents an interview up to $14.25. I don't exactly know how it's calculated, but for me personally, after around 14 interviews, I got my very first payout of $105. And you might be thinking, well, it's not really that much that you earn. It's probably around $7.50 per episode. But at the same time, I was going to do these interviews anyway. So why not use that platform that helped me connect with guests and get free money essentially for it as well? And if you've never earned any money from your podcast, it's a nice bonus. Or maybe you're just literally starting a podcast. So from the very, very start of your podcasting journey, you can actually earn some money. And I was just thinking, if I did this from the very, very start, I could probably be on $1,000 plus at this stage. So I'm going to put the link down below for you, and you can go on that platform and start earning money from today. The second thing that contributed towards this $8,000 is that I found a sponsor. And I'm going to do a separate video completely on sponsors in the future, but I think it comes down to a few keys. The first is that it makes sense for your podcast, and it also makes sense for the brand and the product that you are promoting. For example, if you are a football podcast, you do not want to be promoting Barbie dolls, for example. You want to be looking into football training kit or subscriptions to games or ticket agencies or something along those lines. It has to make sense for you and your audience and the brand or product that you're promoting. The second key is making sure that your metrics align with where the brand is at too. So many people will reach out to enormous brands and expect to be able to create deals with them. And if you're lucky, you might be able to do that. But to use the Barbie example again, or even the football example, it's like reaching out to the NFL or Mattel to get yourself a sponsorship deal when your podcast is only getting a couple of hundred downloads. Those brands will be wanting to work with people with far bigger reach, which might be you in the future, but right right now, it probably isn't. So try and find a brand or a product that matches where your metrics are at. And the final thing that allowed me to make around 95% of that $8,000 was pay to play podcasts. Yes, I said it. Pay to play podcasts. I contemplated this for a while. I went back and forth. I asked a ton of questions to myself of whether this was the route I wanted to go down. And after a few months of doing it, I truly believe that this is an amazing path for anyone who chooses to do it. And for me, there are a ton of reasons as well. There are so many people that get out of podcasting who have amazing shows, amazing messages to spread, but they just simply can't keep up with the editing costs or the time that it takes. And maybe if they were earning a little bit of money from it, they could cut back on the amount of work that they're doing in maybe their full-time job and be able to continue to pursue podcasting. And another big reason is that there are a ton of podcast booking agents out there. And this was where the penny really dropped for me. I was reading an article, doing some research on whether pay to play was a good idea or not. I wish I could find the article. I really can't. If I do, I'm going to put it in the link below, but I can't to this day. But basically something that they said that really allowed me to see the full clarity of this picture was that if you are a part of the transaction of a podcast booking agent reaching out to you and you as a host of a show accept the guest that they propose, you are already part of that transaction. You just aren't getting paid for it. Think about it this way. The podcast booking agent gets their fee, $100, $200, $300 for simply booking in that guest. The guest has paid them and they get exposure to your audience. And what do? You get a guest, which is fair enough, but that's really it. And I don't think that you are getting the best deal as the host. For me, it was a case of saying, well, why don't I just remove the middleman, which is the podcast booking agent? Why do they need to be in the equation? I can just make the deal directly with the person who wants to come on the show, and then the guest gets access to my audience, and as the host of the show, I get paid accordingly. And this, for me, is so much more logical than paying someone who's barely involved in the process. And the next big reason is that it is still 100% possible to maintain the integrity of your show. I think that a lot of people assume that as soon as pay to play comes into the equation, it just turns out to be an hour of someone advertising their product or service and a super biased host. That has not been my experience whatsoever. And I think that this is an important thing that the host needs to do. And personally, I never highlight the guest any more than I usually would. I don't allow them to excessively advertise, and I 100% still call them out if I don't completely agree with what they're saying or I want to question their methods or techniques a little bit more. So there is zero downside for my listeners. They still get the high quality interview that they deserve, and if anything, they actually get a better interview. What I found is that when guests pay to come on shows, they actually come a little bit more prepared and a little bit more ready to give their very best to the interview. And the final reason, which is absolutely huge, is that there is demand. At the stage that I decided to introduce pay to play, I had an enormous list of people who were ready to come on the show, and I also had a ton of people already booked in the pipeline ready to record with me. So for me, it was perfectly fine if someone said that they weren't willing to pay to come on the show. It didn't really impact me too much. So I set my prices, I created a form to gather more information about that guest, and one of the questions on that form was, are you willing to pay $200 to appear on this show? And after almost 200 entries, here are the results. Out of 193 responses, 63.7% of those people said yes. Meaning that of every 3 people who filled in the form, at least 2 of them were willing to pay to come on. And the truth is whilst I was building this up, when I had 30 responses, 40, 120, 150, this was around the same percentage the entire time. It's always kind of been a 60-30 split. And that is exactly how I made $8,000 in around 100 days directly through podcasting. And I really wanted to speak on this topic because it's such a taboo subject. There are barely any articles about it. No one really wants to talk about it. If you ask someone, usually they go down the direction of saying it's unethical, against the values of podcasting and all of that nonsense, but I completely disagree. At the end of the day, it's your audience, it's your show, and it's your decision to do whatever you want to do with it. So if you want to charge people to come on your shows, it is absolutely fine. It is your decision to make. And now I'm super curious to hear the feedback and get your thoughts on this topic. Have you ever tried pay to play? Do you think it's against the laws of podcasting and super unethical? Or will you maybe try this now that you've heard a different perspective? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you've got any questions at all about this topic, just put them down below and I'll make sure that I get back to you. So team, I hope you enjoyed this video and this fresh perspective. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, comment your thoughts and your questions down below, and subscribe for more videos all about podcasting. Take care, and I'll speak to you all very, very soon.